Hello, my name is Jennifer Brandsburg-Engelman, and I'm the project lead and lead author for Regenerative Economics for secondary schools and beyond. Today, I'm going to take you through topic 2 on households. We'll be covering why we've included households in regenerative economics and our particular approach. We'll be looking at the core content of this topic 2. I'll make a recommendation for what to do if you have very little time to spend on this topic, given your mandated curricula, and also give you some advice about how you can use the materials. To get started, let's look at what a household is. A household is people who live together in a shared dwelling and have strong social bonds with one another based on special types of relationships, very often kinship relationships, but also other types of relationships like friendship. The care work that goes on in households matters a lot. In fact, it's so critical for human well-being, we have a real responsibility to include it in our courses. As the organization Wirtschaft ist Care, the economy is care in Germany, says, without care, there are no people. And without people, we don't need an economy. Care is central, and care, the place where care happens most often, is in our households. But even if you only care about the monetary aspects of households, beyond human well-being, the monetary value of unpaid household care and domestic work is about 11 trillion US dollars equivalent per year. It's so important to the entire functioning of all the rest of the economy that we can clearly say that without household production, or reproduction as it's called in academia, no other economic institution would function. It's a critical core component of the economy. Unfortunately, our current courses don't give it much attention. Our current courses draw a narrow systems boundary around markets and either marginalize or almost completely ignore other non-market activity. And that's where we see the state is marginalized. We have discussions of society and the environment deemed as externalities outside the systems boundary. And you can see here in the lower left-hand corner sits household care and domestic work, pretty much invisible. Because of this framing and this narrow systems boundary, we get some interesting formulations in secondary school curricula, like this quote from the Luxembourg National Economics Curriculum, which was only recently revised, which says all households have a common function they consume. The main economic function of a household there is therefore consumption. Anyone who's actually lived in a household and experienced the care and domestic work that takes place in the household knows that the main economic function of a household is not consumption of goods and services produced in markets. It is care. Teaching households is extremely important because powerful people have economics degrees, whether we're talking about in business or in politics. And the economic worldviews we teach them shape how they act. And if we ignore household care and domestic work, we are now getting decisions and policies that undermine that household care and human well-being as a result. So it's really important that we bring households back in, that we make them visible, and that we educate people about how to support household care and domestic work. In the Regenerative Economics course, households sit as a part of the economy, along with 3 other provisioning institutions: markets, state, and commons. You can see it here in the center of this embedded economy diagram. This comes from Donut Economics, Kate Raworth's book. The economy, including households, then sits or is embedded inside society, and therefore the values, power, culture, and social norms, history, law, and politics influence the economy, but also the way the economy functions influences those social elements as well. The economy and society then sits inside Earth systems. All economic activity uses living matter and materials and energy from Earth systems, and it produces both waste and heat that then goes on to impact those systems. So what we're doing in this course is taking a much wider systems boundary than our typical mainstream economics courses do, and taking that wider systems boundary means including households as one of the provisioning institutions on par with markets and state and commons, and framing that as part of the economy. You can see where households are positioned in the larger piece of work for regenerative economics. It's topic 2, directly after an introduction. We put households first after the introduction, even before markets, because of its importance for human well-being and economic activity at large. And you can see the other provisioning institutions, markets, commons, and state, as topic 3, 4, 5. Topic 6 and 7 are money and finance and international exchanges. There's also a separate topic S on systems, and systems thinking definitely is a part of topic 2 on households. Here is where you can find the materials on households on the Regenerative Economics website. You can see in the drop-down menu on the left-hand side that households, the topic has 4 subtopics, and each of those subtopics has 4 sections. And so I'm going to run through very quickly the content that is covered in households, and then we'll be looking at a little bit of that content more closely. 2.1 is the basics about what is the household. The household is, in 2.1.1, the household as a system is described with its parts, relationships, and functions. 2.1.2 is household size and composition, looking both at global differences and changes over time. Section 2.1.3 is on household functions. I've got this in red with stars around it because if you have time to only do one thing, my recommendation would be to take up this topic so that students become much more aware of the vital role of households in the economy and for human well-being. 2.1.4 looks at householding skills so that students again become aware of the various skills that are needed in order to successfully carry out provisioning in households. Subtopic 2.2 is on households' relationships with other provisioning institutions. So here we're looking at how households and markets are related, households and commons, households and the state. And then together at the end, we have a look at how household care might or might not be balanced between these 4 institutions. Again, if you're looking at a very limited period of time, my suggestion would be to look at households and markets because the tensions here are so great. And because of students in your mainstream course, they're likely looking almost exclusively at markets, and therefore understanding the dynamic there with households is important. Section 2.3 looks at, is basically a critique of the status quo relative to power and inequalities that stem from the way we organize household care and domestic work. Section 2.3.1 is on intra-household bargaining power. The power between household members is not equal, and so understanding why that's the case and what factors affect unequal household bargaining power is part of that section. 2.3.2 is about households and gender inequalities. This section then helps students understand how the way we organize care and domestic work inside the household then has implications for gender inequalities outside the household. Section 2.3.3 looks at global care chains. These are all the chains of care that spring up, especially triggered in global north countries where care is not valued, and therefore there is a huge amount of migration around the world to deliver care that's not being valued appropriately in particular places, and therefore springing up and causing then further care deficiencies in other places around the world. Section 2.3.4 is on researching households. We've included this specifically here so that students develop some skills that they can use to think about care inside their own household. Section 2.4 is on strategies to strengthen households. We have a section that takes a systems view. It's kind of an overview of of the way provisioning institutions can strengthen households. And then we go a little bit deeper into the commons, into businesses and markets, and the role of the state, and the kinds of strategies and actions that those other provisioning institutions can be taking to help households, to help strengthen households. So that's the regenerative vision, is in 2.4. So as I mentioned before, if you have time for only one thing, my recommendation would be to take up 2.1.3, the household functions, all the direct and indirect human and ecological care work. And I'm going to open up the website so that we can see this. This is what that section on 2.1.3 household functions looks like. We have here some helpful prior knowledge and learning objectives. Every single section is structured the same way. It always starts with this prior knowledge and learning objectives. The prior learning doesn't mean that you have to have covered these sections in order to understand the current section. We're just trying where we can to make connections to other earlier sections in the textbook where it makes sense. We also have learning objectives here. There is one learning objective associated with this section, and this learning objective, you can see, is part of the specifications. Yeah, so there is an alignment here. Now, every section of text, including this one on household functions, starts with a hook. In this case, it's the story about Adam Smith, who wrote his famous book, The Wealth of Nations, while he was living with his mother, Margaret, who cared for him at the time. But of course, the care work that was involved with enabling Adam Smith to write The Wealth of Nations was not part of his theories. The care work was invisible, as it is in most of our textbooks. After the hook then comes the main sort of content input as the textbook, and you can see here the material that I just shared with you on the slides is developed here, also with appropriate links to other parts of the textbook. So in this case, we have the social regeneration, the ecological regeneration, regenerative work. After the text, then comes activities. So we have anywhere from 1 to sometimes 5 or 6 different activities that are possible to do with this section. In this case, we have used a drop-down bar here just to help save some space on the page. But you can see here the 3 different activities. One is a kind of reflective piece about how members of the household fulfill the various regenerative functions. Another one is making a link between household functions and the social foundation of the donut economics model. And the last one here, which I'll just spend a little bit more time on, is a discussion around whether unpaid care work should be paid. And in this case, what students are given is a set of arguments, and they have to determine whether these arguments are for and against paying for unpaid care work. And then these set students up with some arguments that they can use for a discussion afterwards, which will then, in the process of discussing it with one another, will raise even further questions that they could explore. After the activity, we have checking for understanding questions. These are usually 5 questions that are auto-marked, so students can do these on their own, for example, if they're doing a pre-reading at home or something like it. We have a list of further exploration links. So if a student is really interested in household functions, then these are some additional links that they can explore. And we also have identified the difficulty level so that they can choose some that are at an appropriate level or maybe challenging if they're looking to challenge themselves. We have a list of the sources that we use to write the text. And then finally, we have a list of terminology in the order of appearance here, as well as a link to Quizlet, a Quizlet list with all of those terms so that students can play games, for example, here on with these flashcards. Yeah, so that's an overview of the section. Now, all the sections of the textbook have that same structure to make it easy to use. So, some additional guidance about how to use this. We suggest that if you have a mandated course, for example, the A-level, the IB, Cambridge International AP, or the Indian CBSE, etc., that you could seed your courses with regenerative economics materials as and when you can. Some teachers are using a flipped classroom, so they might have the students read the text at home. The text is usually about 1,000 words. It takes most students about 10 minutes to read. Would take them a bit longer if they were taking some notes, for example. But then they use the class time then to do some activities. So that we're not spending lots of class time doing direct instruction on the text, but in fact are engaging with students on the ideas. Aside from that, there are some systems where electives are possible, and teachers are using this material to create new electives, either for a unit, a semester, a year, or even 2 years. You can integrate these materials into other subjects where relevant, or even provide some extracurricular activities for students. Some examples of places where these alternative uses I've seen is in choice topics in the Netherlands, theory of knowledge in the IB. Most of this material is appropriate for theory of knowledge because it challenges the mainstream, or the EPQ at A levels. We've also seen teachers develop self-study groups with students. Students could even set these up on their own because all the materials are written with a student audience in mind. And then last, we can ask you or suggest that you participate in education institution economics reviews. So if you know that your economics curriculum is being reviewed, please take the opportunity to participate in those reviews so that you can make your voice heard and we can get more people at the table who are a voice for change. Now, to help you, if you've got a mandated curriculum, and to help you find the footholds for where you might be able to integrate some regenerative economics more easily, we have created some curriculum maps. And you can see here, those curriculum maps are right here underneath the textbook. And when you go to that page, you'll see various curricula from around the world. So here we've got the IB and the Cambridge International syllabi, but we've got even more there, so you can see the full list. When you click on the link, it will take you to a spreadsheet where you can see the relevant syllabus and the content that's there, as well as links to areas of regenerative economics that you might be able to weave into what you're doing, along with some additional comments and notes that can help you figure out how to do it. Your action matters. When you take up regenerative economics, you're really helping further the larger movement of trying to get curriculum change around the world, which can then provide or give us social tipping points for education institutions elsewhere, as well as in wider society. We have an enormous window of opportunity right now because in 2025, the International Baccalaureate and the Netherlands are both reviewing their economics curricula. England and Scotland are reviewing their entire national curricula. And so what we're hoping is that economics is going to be opened up for review in those two systems as well. Our theory of change is that if we can get these 4 institutions to make a shift towards regenerative economics, that this will set off global social tipping points and we'll start to see education institutions around the world making this change. So thank you again for engaging with regenerative economics. Here is the website URL along with the QR code that will take you there. If you'd ever like to talk, just send me a note. I'm happy to meet up if you need any more support or if you've got suggestions.